You're very gracious. It's all because Derek made those comments last year. Thank you, Derek. Keep it up. Let me just start out by making a comment or two about Wayne. 40 years, and he's coordinating the NCAP accreditation review next year. It's phenomenal. Thank you, Wayne, for your service.
You're certainly welcome.
Let me welcome all of the faculty back this morning, and let me welcome especially our 23 new faculty members. I know our new colleagues will enjoy it here very much, and you'll find, as I did 12 years ago, that the men and women in this room are some of the most hospitable people you'll find any place. They'll do everything they can to help you settle into your positions and settle into this community. All you have to do is ask for any assistance you might need. Now, there were a few events that occurred this summer, while many of you are away, that I should at least mention this morning. First of all, David Cowes and Natalie Rowland were married. Let's extend our congratulations. Then Jacqueline Jones went away for a Fulbright Fellowship, came back, and we discovered she also was married this past year. And then there's yet one other event that merits a comment or two, given the barbs that the provost and I have suffered over the past few years. This summer, John Tuttle accepted an administrative position as coordinator of international programs. That's right, John, of his own volition, came to Gomorrah. Even more surprising, this past week at the cottage, he was overheard discussing the necessity of designing a new administrative form. You know, I'm not going to dwell on this, but for you skeptics who demand irrefutable proof as to the effects of global warming, there it is. Seriously, more of our students are participating in these exchange programs than ever before. Jeanette Myers handled these responsibilities superbly the past few years, and so will John Tuttle. Congratulations, John, on accepting that position. Now, prior to discussing university matters this year, I'd also like to acknowledge the chair of the faculty, Keith Best. Keith has told all of us that this is his last year as chair of the faculty, and however much we may regret his decision, I'm afraid we're compelled to accept it. Over the past 3 years, we have watched the enormous amount of time and energy he's devoted to this job. And we've also watched that he's put his own research and creative pursuits on hold to serve this university. My friends, he's been a forceful and aggressive advocate for this faculty, and he's been a trusted advisor and confidant to the provost and me. He has worked continuously to ensure that all interests have been served fairly and compassionately. In recognition of this service, the University Commencement Committee has voted unanimously to award him an honorary degree in May and to ask him to serve as the commencement speaker, the first member of this faculty to be so honored in the last 25 years. Of course, Keith still has 9 months left in his term, so we'll save further accolades until spring. But congratulations. Now let's discuss state finances. The good news is that state revenues are likely to be up 3 to 4% this year, largely as a result of the increased vibrancy in the state's manufacturing sector. The less positive news is that this growth, roughly $250 million in new money, will be eaten up by increased funding for Medicaid and the formula funding requirements for K through 12 education, the Education Finance Act. That'll take roughly $500 million. The bottom line is this for us. The best that we can realistically hope for in the coming year is that the year be free of mid-year budget reductions. But the state's economy does appear to be growing incrementally, and I think that portends well for us for the years ahead. especially when you consider what we've been through the last 3 years. Meanwhile, here at FMU, our finances are in good shape despite the loss of almost $10 million in recurring state appropriations over the past 3 years. Our Education Foundation's endowment is at $25 million, and our cash reserves from the Real Estate Foundation and the Capital Maintenance Reserve are just over $9 million. We did increase our tuition by a modest 3.8% this past summer, but our tuition is still one of the lowest in the states. The additional $960,000 that we received in non-recurring money in this year's State Appropriations Act will allow us to fund a number of essential maintenance projects across campus, to include a new roof for the Student Center, a new HVAC system for the library, something that we've desperately needed for a couple of decades. And it will fund some work on the exterior of Founders Hall and Cawthon Media Center. We finally completed the Performing Arts Center, and we've renovated this dining facility with no residual debt remaining on either project. And construction is well underway on our new athletic campus, which is due to be completed early in 2012, I think shortly after the beginning of the new year. By the way, I should stop here and recognize the Stephen Sweda and the wonderful staff at this dining facility for the job they've done here. My friends, this was done in just under 90 days. They started right after commencement, and they completed last week, and they worked diligently throughout the summer to get it done, and also Mike Ritchie on our facility staff, who worked extensively with that effort. And of course, I should pause and always mention Jay Kispert, who oversaw that effort and made it possible in the end. Thank you for all of your efforts. Now let's just take a second and talk about new buildings, future buildings. This fall we'll start on the new office services building, and sometimes later this year we'll explore the possibility perhaps of expanding the cottage. This year or next we may also assess the prospects of building a new facility to house the McNair Center, the International Studies Program, the Honors Program, and perhaps the Center for Entrepreneurship and the Center for Excellence. Obviously, this effort would be dependent upon our ability to raise most, if not all, of the requisite funding from private sources. But we're going to have to do something about additional office space for faculty in the immediate future, and a statewide bond bill, an essential source of funding for the Business and Education building, still faces formal opposition in the House. Please note, for the record, that I said the House, not the Senate. I actually think we could get a bond bill through the Senate now. Of course, there is the issue of a gubernatorial veto, but that's a moot point if you can't get the bill through the legislature in the first place. I do want you to know that the university, all the university and technical college presidents in the state, lobby strenuously for a bond bill every single year. And we'll get one eventually, but the time still isn't right economically, or perhaps politically, or perhaps the two are simply no longer distinguishable in South Carolina. Seven years ago, we went about the process of developing a comprehensive strategic plan for this university. The plan received laudatory comments from the SACS reviewers during the accreditation process in 2008. Of course, every time that we discuss strategic planning here in the PD, I'm reminded of a story that Kurt Vonnegut told frequently. It seems there was this customs officer on the border, and every week a curious little man would cross the border pushing a wheelbarrow. The customs officer knew he was smuggling something, but he didn't know what. He would search him in the wheelbarrow every single time he crossed the border, but he never found anything. This went on for 25 years. Finally, the day before the officer was to retire, the man with the wheelbarrow crosses the border yet again. The customs officer looks at him and says, "Come on, level with him. I'm retiring tomorrow and I won't turn you in. What have you been smuggling all these years? The little man looks at him, smiles slyly, and says, wheelbarrows. You know, we teach in a state in which the preponderance of the population is woefully undereducated. We don't need a plan to tell us what to do. The what and the why seem to me to be obvious, but it is imperative that we focus occasionally on the how and the where. So I've asked the provost and the chair of the faculty to co-chair a strategic planning committee to begin the planning process and revamp our plan. I've also asked the following people to serve on this committee: the vice chair of the faculty, Becky Flanagan; the secretary of the faculty, Glenn Gorley; the vice president of administration, Charlene Wages; and the chair of the faculty accreditation committee, John Hester, or as he prefers to be known, Mr. Baseball. Just an inside joke. Payback for the accolades over the Braves. Please accept it. And I would also ask the faculty to elect 3 representatives: 1 from liberal arts, 1 from education, and 1 from business to be a part of this effort. We'll ask these 9 colleagues, all of whom hold faculty rank, to develop a draft document and bring it back to the faculty, you, the administration, and the trustees early in the 2012-2013 academic year. Hopefully, this will provide us with a new plan by 2013 in order to coincide with our SAC's 50-year review. Now, let's talk a little bit about faculty positions. Although many of this year's 23 new faculty are replacements for retirements or resignations, I did ask Charlene to look at our staffing patterns for new faculty over the past 11 years as compared to student enrollment growth. From 1999 through this past year, our full-time faculty has grown by 28%, while our student enrollment growth has been 23%. So the growth of new faculty at this university has outpaced enrollment growth on the part of students by 5% during this time period. I'm especially proud that we've been able to keep our faculty staffing levels up, even while our state appropriations have diminished by almost 50% over the past 3 years. I'm also optimistic we'll be able to add net new faculty over the next few years, not only to staff new programs, but to strengthen existing programs, all assuming, of course, that the economy stays on track. Now let's discuss academic programs. We've received approval from the Commission on Higher Education during the summer for our Nurse Practitioner Program Planning Summary, the type of gracefully precise title that only the CHE could devise. This simply means that we can proceed this year with the internal approval processes for that program. Accordingly, Rich, Keith, Becky, Ruth Whitman-Price, and the nursing faculty will be working with the Graduate Council and the Faculty Senate this fall to develop the curriculum for this program. Depending upon the faculty's approval, the board's approval, and the CHE's final approval, we would hope to bring new faculty on board next fall and have the program in operation by January of 2013. And I told many of you at the spring faculty forum, I'm confident that we'll have support, sufficient support from private sources to fund most of the program's startup and operating expenses. In addition to the nursing initiative, the provost and I have listened over the past few years, almost ad nauseum, to recurring requests from PD Industries to develop an engineering degree. About 4 years ago, the provost, senior members of the physics faculty, and I began discussions with Clemson as to the possibility of developing a joint or cooperative program. These discussions were non-productive. Actually, they were more than that. They were almost a tad insulting. But let me not go down that road. Suffice it to say, we decided to continue our discussions within our own community. During the intervening years, though, the demand for this degree on the part of existing and new industries in the PD has only intensified. So, we're now in a position, I think, where we either look at developing a degree ourselves or we step aside and allow another institution to come into the PD and offer the program. I believe that the long-term interests of this region may be best served by developing an industrial engineering major on our own. But please understand that this would be a very complex degree program to develop. So we're asking Peter King, David Peterson, and other members of the physics department to assess the programmatic and fiscal implications of creating this program and send us their analysis and recommendations by January. Similarly, the provost and I have been visited over the past 2 to 3 years by a number of groups representing the South Carolina City County Management Association, the Municipal Association, and the Association of Regional Councils of Government. All have urged us to consider the development of a Master of Public Administration program here, specifically a program that would educate regional and local government administrators. Initially, we rebuffed these overtures, but it's increasingly clear that the 3 existing programs in the state, USC, the College of Charleston, and Clemson, have little interest in local government administration, the fastest growing public administration market in South Carolina. So the past few months, Rich and I have engaged in very productive discussions with the President and Provost of Coastal Carolina University regarding a joint public administration graduate degree. Such a program would address the immediate and developing employment needs in the PD, the Grand Strand, and the Low Country, while allowing the 2 universities to share the costs. Perhaps more important, it would allow us to develop a template for similar programs in the future with Coastal and other universities across the state. I'm still not certain we want to do this, but we'll ask Alyssa Waters, David White, and Hubert Setzler to assess the feasibility of this program over the next 3 months and bring us their recommendations. Now, let's move on to the topic of summer school. The program remains strong, but enrollment did diminish a bit this summer. So this year, we will not increase the stipend. By the way, that's the first year in the last 12 years we haven't increased the stipend. We'll keep it 11% with our standard threshold of a minimum of 6 students per course. We may be at the tipping point with that stipend. So I think that that's the best we can do right now, but I will make you this promise. We'll reassess that summer stipend again next year and each year thereafter to see if we have the latitude to increase it any in the future. I wouldn't make no apologies, however, that it seems as though we're about 25 to 30% higher with our summer school pay than any institution in the state of South Carolina. And I'm very careful about starting my car after Council of Presidents meetings for fear that there may be an explosive device. But if those guys wanted to pay their faculty better, perhaps they wouldn't have those concerns. Last year, the Faculty Research and Development Fund received an allocation of $275,000. Glenn, this year will increase that to $300,000. Similarly, our QEP initiative please know David Peterson started that. I'm sure there's a proposal on your desk. Just kidding, Dave. This year, similarly, our QEP initiative had a budget of $200,000 this past year, and there you are. We'll increase that budget to $225,000 for the coming year. Now, please understand the strategy here. We'd love to have the QEP budget by 2013 up to $250,000, which is what I think we told the SACS evaluators when they were here in 2008. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to achieve that. My friends, I was very pleased that we were able to provide a 3% salary increase to the faculty and staff this year. From From the time that we saw the initial draft of the Ways and Means budget back in February, I was confident that we could support a responsible increase. But as the budget progressed with no greater reduction than the initial 5%, I felt that we might be able to move from responsible to decent, and ultimately we did. By the way, there is some humor there. 6, 7 years ago, if we had taken a 5% cut as an institution on appropriations, we would be absolutely stunned. Now we're deliriously happy. It's amazing what we've come through with the state of South Carolina in the past few years, but let's be thankful for what we have. But just when we place a solid compensatory package on the table for you, the State Budget Control Board raises health insurance rates by an average of 9%, with the cost of the increase to be shared by the employer and the employees. Now, most of you heard my concerns on this issue when this last happened 3 to 4 years ago. Any substantial increase in health insurance means that faculty and staff, especially those that receive lower compensation, and most especially custodial and grounds crew staff, are forced to make hard choices about what coverage they keep and what coverage they give up. And with soaring health care costs in this economy, this is simply not the time to be giving up any health care coverage. There's great variability in these premium increases based upon the plan and coverage that a specific employee has selected. But based upon data received from the Budget Control Board, we believe that the most substantial increase borne by our employees will be in the range of about $200 per year. So I will do my very best to ensure that every member of this faculty and staff receives a $200 increase in their annual pay, beginning with the January 15th paycheck, in order to offset this increase. Of course, some of you may have premium increases. Of course, some of you may have premium increases slightly more or less than this, once again, depending upon the health cover you've selected. But the plan does not allow us to defray the cost of your increase as an employee directly. The only tool we have is to deal with this issue indirectly with an across-the-board salary increase, just as we did 3 or 4 years ago. Now, one final point on this issue that I'm compelled to make. Will we do this with any and all future increases in employee health care costs? The answer is I simply don't know. This time, the cost of the increase for the university and the additional pay raise to offset your increase will total about $200,000. We can afford it. There may come a time when we can't afford to do it, but right now we can and we will, and we'll worry about those future increases when they occur. Well, with this, I think I've spent a fair amount of our recurring revenue for next year, so I should probably close. But not without thanking all of you for your support, your hard work, and your commitment to this university and students. You know, by any standard, your teaching, your research, and your service has distinguished you as one of the most productive faculties in the state. And this achievement has been increasingly recognizable to people within this region and all across South Carolina over the past decade. And I want each of you to know how appreciative I am to have the opportunity to work alongside you. Now, let's have one hell of a year. Thank you.